addressing the concerns of the opposition. Are you satisfied at all with what was announced today by the presidential camp?
Actually, we have not met so far, after the announcement that was made like hardly half an hour ago. But I can definitely tell you that the announcement is very frustrating. It's a continuation of the stubborn attitude that the president has been dealing with since he started issuing the constitutional declaration on the 22nd of November. We believe that cancelling the declaration now is relatively meaningless because the main target of that declaration was to give immunity to the decision taken by the Constituent Assembly that's drafting the Constitution, and they have already done with that job. So basically, the key issue about securing the constitutional process, or at least of drafting the Constitution, is done, and now the President is insisting to hold the Constitution on time, and we just issued a statement ourselves, the National Salvation Front, basically saying that our key demand is to postpone the call for the referendum because we did not take part in the drafting of the Constitution. All the liberal parties pulled out, all the women representatives, all the representatives of the Christian church. So after that, you cannot claim that this is a draft that is satisfying to at least the majority of the Egyptian people. I'm not going to talk about consensus because that's impossible, but the draft that they want to push to vote includes a project for a strict Islamic state. It deprives us from many major freedoms that we wanted after the January 25th revolution. And unfortunately, I don't think the president is leaving us any other option but to escalate our opposition. I mean, we are under a lot of pressure from our roots, from our people on the ground, asking us for more serious positions. They are not happy with just these two demands.
When you say, Mr. Dawood, escalate your opposition, what do you mean exactly?
Well, I've attended today the meeting of the leaders. Of course, there are calls for more demonstrations all over Egypt. We've already seen these ugly scenes all over the country. Unfortunately, over the past 2 weeks, there are some serious calls for strikes. If it didn't work, to go on strikes in certain sectors. There are even calls for civil disobedience. But it's not going to be an easy flow for the president if he continues to ignore the key demand that we want a constitution in which we find ourselves. And even the argument...
Why not put these demands, Mr. Dawood, directly to the president? If you have so many grievances, why did you refuse to enter the national dialogue talks that took place today? If you have concerns, why not voice them directly to the presidential camp?
Because our concerns have been voiced repeatedly even before the president issued his own constitutional declaration. Mr. Baradei, Mr. Sabahi, Mr. Musa, Mr. Abdul Man'am Abdel Futuh, they all met the president only a few days before he issued the constitutional declaration. He did not tell us about it before they were issued, and basically kept it as a surprise for everyone. And then our key demands are known and are simple. I think the statement we issued today was statement number 10. Since this crisis started, and every time we say we want a constitution that represents the majority of Egyptians and not a minority, and we could not believe, we were shocked by the powers that the president gave himself in the constitutional declaration. So on one hand, I'm happy that he canceled those expansive powers that he gave himself. But on the other hand, I don't see why he's pushing the country towards a confrontation by insisting on holding the Constitution on time.
Okay, let me ask you just one last question, if I can, Mr. Dawood. There are some who suggest that the target of some in the Egyptian opposition now, including in the National Salvation Front, is not the Constitution nor the presidential decree, but Mohamed Morsi himself. That perhaps what you want now is to see Mohamed Morsi stand down. Is that the case? What do you respond to those critics who say that?
That's not the case at all, because, again, I'm talking as an insider who was attending the meeting of the leaders. I'm not a decision maker, but the leaders who were meeting today, this issue was being proposed, and we were firm about our respect to the fact that the president was elected democratically by at least 51.7%. But then he has also to remember that there are another nearly 48% of Egyptians who did not vote for him. And this means that he has to compromise. He has to be a consensus builder, not a person who's only backing his own group and speaking in its name.
So just to clarify, Mr. Dawood, your aim then ultimately is not to unseat Mohamed Morsi.
This is not definitely in our agenda at all. Our agenda is basically limited to having a new draft constitution that everybody's satisfied about before going to the referendum. And please let me remind you that the president, in his own declaration on the 22nd of November, he was himself the one who proposed extending the work of the committee drafting the constitution by 2 months. Only 2 weeks ago, he said that he's ready to do this. And then today he comes and says, no, the constitution will, the referendum will be held in time because I cannot do it legally. So 2 weeks ago, he can legally postpone for 2 months. And today, no, I'm sorry, I suddenly remembered I cannot do that. It's ridiculous. And it's basically, I think, trying to satisfy his own people and the own group of the Muslim Brotherhood, and not the majority of Egyptians who have been on the streets for the past 10 days. We've seen a lot of violence. I think everyone is tired. And I think to stop the bloodshed, it's worth postponing the referendum on the Constitution and giving us a chance to sit together and reach some compromise that's satisfactory to all the Egyptians.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us. That's Khaled Dawood, the spokesman for the National Salvation Front, the main opposition alliance in Egypt. Thanks for your time.